In 2023, Heart of Illinois Lutheran Parish awarded me a 3-month sabbatical. This is the first sabbatical I have had in over 25 years as a pastor of the ELCA. Pastoral sabbaticals are designed so that a pastor might escape from the rigors of pastoral work for an extended period of time. I like to say that one of the primary goals of my sabbatical was to rediscover what it is like to be a layperson. It is suggested that time during sabbatical should be split 3 ways, but not necessarily equally. It should be split between time with the family, time for yourself, and time dedicated to growth and education. It is that model that I followed as I planned and experienced my sabbatical, carving out time to spend with each of my children and with my wife, exploring, hiking, and fishing in places that are both new and old, which was a way to feed my own soul, and learning and sharing from others who are in shared ministry sites throughout the country. On May 15th, I hopped into my Toyota Tacoma towing my teardrop camper, which I affectionately called Little Yellow, and I embarked on a 3-month excursion. This is the story of my sabbatical. The first leg of the sabbatical was what I referred to as my northern swing, though it was actually still in the Midwest, but the northern Midwest. I left on May 15th when I journeyed to a county park on Red Cedar Lake near Birchwood, Wisconsin, for a couple days of walleye fishing with my dear friend Dallas Sloan. This was my old stomping grounds, the lake where I spent many a fishing opener while at my first call at First Lutheran Church in Barron, Wisconsin. Fishing was pretty slow, but we did come home with 5 very nice walleye when virtually everyone we talked to was having no luck whatsoever. From there, I traveled north, picking up my oldest son Sam at the airport in Ironwood, Michigan, before continuing north to the top of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, Copper Harbor. There, we embarked on a boat that took us to Isle Royale National Park, where we spent 7 days hiking from one end of the island to the other, getting 80 to 85 miles of hiking in before all was said and done. Late May did not provide the most favorable backpacking weather, as the temperature varied day by day by as much as 40 degrees. But the early season meant the mosquitoes were not yet an issue, which was a plus. We had the privilege of watching the island transform from gray and lifeless to budding and green. The hiking was challenging, the vistas were marvelous, the moose were elusive, and the food was delicious. But topping everything was the company of my son as we experienced this gem in God's grand creation. It was an experience neither of us will forget. After returning from Isle Royale, we made our way back to Ironwood, where we met Teresa, and we spent the Memorial Day weekend with her mother on the family farm. While there, we made our annual plunge into Lake Superior, and I gave a pint of blood to the mosquitoes while capturing an image of what may have been the best sunset of the entire summer. I then headed south, where I met my friend Dallas again, this time at his cabin for smallmouth fishing. It was incredible fishing. On one of the days, I boated 50 smallmouth, 90% of which were over 16 inches. I followed this fishing expedition by heading south to see my youngest child, Alex. Teresa and some friends from Princeton met me for the weekend in Lanesboro, Minnesota, where we saw Alex on stage. We enjoyed some good food both at the campsite and in the local restaurants, and we got a few bike rides in along picturesque Root River. It was also while staying in Lanesboro that I made my first visit to a shared ministry site. On Sunday, I ventured into Iowa to visit One in Faith Parish, which is made up of 4 congregations in the hills of northeast Iowa. One of the congregations boasts being the oldest Bavarian Lutheran congregation west of the Mississippi. On June 6th, I returned home to spend a couple days with my lovely bride, do some laundry, and restock Little Yellow before heading off on the second leg of my travels. The second leg of the sabbatical, the eastern swing, is affectionately known as the wet leg. Rain was a recurring theme throughout the 21 days of this trip. The first destination of this second leg were the Green Mountains of New Hampshire. After 2 very long days of travel, during which there were times when I felt quite small and insignificant on the road, and which included a pelting rain and hailstorm as I drove through Vermont, I arrived at Franconia Notch State Park, which would be my home for 6 days of mountain exploration. It rained every day of my time there except for one, thus much of my planned hiking was curtailed. But still, the truck and some short hikes helped me explore the many mountain lakes, scenic drives, and overlooks, and waterfalls of this beautiful part of the country. Of all the places I traveled to during the summer, this is the first place I hope to return to with Teresa. I think she will love it, and I would really like to hike the famed Franconia Ridge Trail that I was rained out from. From New Hampshire, I traveled a couple hours to a state park outside of Boston so I could see Kim, and as an added bonus, Sam, who was out visiting his girlfriend. They treated me to an early Father's Day present, taking me to Fenway Park to see a ball game, which started 2 hours late because of a thunderstorm. Kim and I camped in the rain over the weekend. We went candlepin bowling because we were rained out of a street arts festival we had hoped to attend, and we dodged raindrops during a Father's Day cookout. The sun finally emerged as I headed south out of Boston. However, due to the joy of being with loved ones and the excitement of serendipitous plans, the long weekend could not have been much better. Plus, on the one non rainy day, Thursday, Kim and I were able to enjoy a sunset from the literal top of the city of Boston. Shenandoah National Park was my next destination. Ironically, the trip there, including a brief one-night stay in New Jersey, was dry. But just as I pulled into Shenandoah, literally as I pulled away from the ranger station after checking in, a thunderstorm hit. That was an omen, as every single day I was in the park was marked by rain and fog. But still, thanks to the truck and the Skyline Drive, which traverses the 104 miles of the park, I still had a very enjoyable 5 days. The signature feature of the park is its numerous scenic overlooks, which in many cases took on a whole new look with the weather. I did decide to take one longer hike, a 7-mile jaunt, but regretted it as I came back absolutely soaked to the bone. But I was able to embark on a number of shorter hikes between the rains. I even hiked to a place called Compton Point, but the view there was swallowed up in the clouds. Saturday morning, June 24th, the sun came out just in time for me to head to Pennsylvania, where I visited southern Clinton County Lutheran Parish. It is a 5-point parish in the mountains of central Pennsylvania, with 2 of the congregations in one valley, 2 in another valley, and the other in the small town of Lock Haven. The Sunday of my visit to this parish was one of the nicest weather-wise I had on this entire leg of the trip. Fortunately, I was able to enjoy an afternoon exploring a bit of the Susquehanna River Valley on my way back to the campground that afternoon. Monday, I began my journey home. One of my stops was in Ohio, where I camped in one more thunderstorm, but also got to visit and tour the birthplace of Little Yellow, the new camp factory in Sugar Creek, Ohio. It was a week before I would embark on the third leg of my sabbatical journeys. But though I was at home, I wasn't really at home. We spent a couple nights in the suburbs at a family wedding and a couple nights camping locally over the 4th of July. The few nights actually at home were spent cleaning and then packing up again. On January 6th, I set my GPS for Cooperstown and began driving. Don't be misled. It was not to the Baseball Hall of Fame. No, I was headed to Cooperstown, North Dakota, where I spent a long weekend with the good folk of Tri-County Ministries. A 6-point parish made up of 5 ELCA congregations and 1 Presbyterian congregation. Tri-County has been in existence for 30 plus years, and it's had as many as 9 member congregations. I worshiped at 2 of the 6 congregations and visited 2 others during my time there. From Cooperstown, I headed back to Lanesboro, stopping in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for a night to catch the MLB Home Run Derby and pick up another state for Little Yellow. The 7 days I spent at Maple Springs Campground, about 22 or 23 miles from Lanesboro, was the longest I would stay at any one place during the entire sabbatical. My time there was spent enjoying the campground, trout fishing, reading, trout fishing, watching a paint-off, trout fishing, golfing, and trout fishing. Those activities were shared with Alex when his schedule allowed. On the weekend, Teresa brought my mom, and a friend brought Teresa's mom, and we all enjoyed the local restaurants and, most importantly, the local theater. Alex was marvelous in the play Death Trap. My one passion that did not get exercised on this portion of my journeys was photography. But in my defense, I could not figure out how to carry much camera equipment with all the fly fishing gear I was carrying. Did I mention that I did a fair bit of trout fishing while on this leg of the trip? The final trip of my journeys included my favorite travel companion, took me the farthest away from home, included mountains, national parks, and bighorn sheep, removed 2 locations from the bucket list, and brought the biggest curveball of the summer. After a few days of unpacking and repacking, I picked up Teresa from work, and we spent the next week and a half traveling to Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Having been to this park in 2019, we wanted to return as the wildlife and the landscapes are incredible. We would have liked to stay longer than a day and a half, but we had new places to visit that were farther west and which we hoped would prove to be just as magical. It was a good day's drive across most of Montana, but we were overjoyed to arrive at the Glacier National Park area, a place we had designated as the next national park we'd like to visit as we pulled out of Yellowstone way back in the summer of 1990. It took 33 years to get to Glacier, but it was worth the wait. We traversed the Going to Sun Road numerous times, enjoyed some marvelous hikes, had close encounters with wildlife, marveled at the mountain meadows, the waterfalls, the glacial lakes, and yes, the glaciers themselves. But in the end, we felt like we only saw a small part of what Glacier National Park has to offer. This place definitely lived up to its spot on the bucket list. But we had plans to head further west and find some more new places, and so west we went. After a brief stop to experience the charm of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, we parked Little Yellow for 5 days while we boarded a boat heading up Lake Chelan to Holden Village. This Lutheran retreat community, situated in the North Cascade Mountains, used to be a mining village. We spent a week relaxing, making new friends, learning from visiting theologians and scholars, hiking, photographing, and enjoying all the mountains had to offer. The hike to Holden Lake was perhaps my favorite hike of the entire summer, even though a marmot decided to make a meal of one of my walking sticks. Oh, and before I forget, I did quite a bit of fishing and caught a whole lot of trout. This place, too, lived up to the hype that put it on our bucket list. After a wonderful week at Holden, we continued our westward trek, pointing the truck toward Vancouver, Washington, and Portland, Oregon. But as we drove west, Teresa's nose began to have the sniffles and her energy seemed to disappear. The minor outbreak of COVID at Holden Village had found its way into Teresa's body. This changed our plans entirely. My fourth visit to a shared ministry site had to be canceled. We could no longer put Teresa on a plane in Portland as our original plans dictated. And we could not visit with my former intern pastor who serves in Vancouver, Washington. We did make a quick run to the beach so we could say we'd made it to the Pacific Ocean. But then we headed for home, stopping in Idaho, Wyoming, and Nebraska, avoiding people. One night even making a delivery person leave a pizza at the entrance so they would not be exposed. Beating all odds, I somehow was able to come away without getting COVID. In order to salvage something of my final days of sabbatical, we dropped the camper off at a campground outside Omaha, finished our route home to drop Teresa off, and I returned to Omaha, where I took in 3 minor league baseball games with the Iowa Cubs dominating the Omaha Storm Chasers, enjoyed the Omaha Zoo and the Wildlife Safari Park, and got to worship with old friends and colleagues who had just relocated to the Omaha area. Not all people are aware of it, but Omaha is a city with quite a bit to offer. I can't say enough about how much I appreciate the privilege to take a sabbatical. The unencumbered time I was able to spend with my family, the exploration I was able to do of God's wondrous creation, and the learning and fellowship afforded with other shared ministry sites filled me up in so many ways. A special thanks to the leadership of Heart of Illinois Lutheran Parish who valued me and believed in me enough to make this sabbatical a reality. A huge shout out to the sabbatical team that made sure things were taken care of at First and Emmanuel so that I did not have to worry while I was gone. And thanks also to Pastor Joy Alsop, who was on call during my absence. This video focused mainly on my travels and my time with my family. I am in the process of producing a video that will share much of what I learned from our neighbors at One in Faith Parish, Southern Clinton County Lutheran Parish, and Tri-County Ministries. I invite you to check that out when it's complete as well. On the final Sunday of the sabbatical, I sat with Pastors Lucy and Dan Weinert as we worshiped at Resurrection Lutheran Church in Gretna, Nebraska. As we worshiped, I didn't think, if I were leading worship today, I'd do it this way. And as we responded in the liturgy, my voice did not default to the leader voice that I use when presiding at worship. Apparently, the goal to rediscover what it is like to be a layperson was accomplished.